two general reasons for dams. There's flood control and irrigation. The need for irrigation is because most of our water comes in the form of snow during the winter, but we need it in the summer. And so we need to be able to take that when the snow melts, instead of running off directly into the rivers and downstream to other states, we build the reservoirs to hold back and store water to distribute it to irrigators later in the summer. So without that, we would not be able to, that storage, we wouldn't be able to produce the agriculture that basically allowed us to develop. And the other need is for flood protection. And so the dams, and like upstream in the Boise River, there's 3 major reservoirs, some for irrigation, some for storm protection. And so if you walk up and down the Boise River, there's a lot of development in the floodplain, and that the only way we can do that is because we build the flood control reservoirs to cut the peak off the flood, store it up and release it later. But last year was a particular challenge because those 2 needs for reservoirs are conflicting. If you're managing a reservoir for irrigation, you want the reservoir to be as full as possible. And so this time, if irrigation were the only management control, you'd just keep them full. That way you are sure to have enough to last the summer. If you're managing for flood protection, you need them empty right now so that when the floods come, the reservoirs can hold them up. And so that's a decision that the reservoir managers are always trying to figure out. I was like, oh, should we release water now to make room for the snowpack? But then if the snow doesn't come, then you go into an irrigation season without enough water. And so that's a challenge every year. Last year was particularly challenging. Those are the main things. What reservoirs do. They do disrupt the sediment flow. Sediment, rocks, sand are moving downstream in natural rivers, and reservoirs essentially stop that. And so it does affect fish habitat. Various different fish species have different requirements of what the makeup of the sediments are, a certain amount of gravel, a certain amount of sand. And so it does affect sediment transport and storage, and also stream temperature. That's a critical part of fish habitat, is temperature. Trout need cold water. When streams are artificially low, it tends to warm up, and so alters fish habitat that way. I think there's no getting around that we live in managed systems. And so I think if they're managed properly, that the benefits outweigh the cost. If all of the proper users are considered in the management, historically, reservoirs are managed just for our humans and be able to live here. If we start to also consider ecosystems as a user of the river systems and bring that into management, then it's beneficial. Something called beneficial uses that the water management agencies are required to fulfill. Beneficial uses primarily include agriculture and even recreation and water resources, but on the list are things like environmental quality and fish habitat. And so by law, I don't know the exact details, but the agencies are required to meet to their best ability all of those beneficial uses. And so minimum stream flows for fish habitat is one of them. It's sometimes sacrificed, and that's why sometimes you hear about agencies being sued because by law they're required to fulfill those obligations. There are certain years where they just can't meet all of them, so they have to make choices of which ones to meet and which ones to not. But So the general answer is yes, it's possible. It's often hard to make it happen. But I think we do need more awareness of, impacts downstream.
That was really